Hello and welcome to the Texas Apartment Association's Education Foundation series, Hints from HR. If this is your first time tuning in, this is a series centered around tips that may help in locating an ideal career for the job seeker and vice versa for the seeking organization. I'm Blaise Spitaleri, the Business Development Manager with Gemstar Construction. On the program today, we'll be discussing job descriptions. We're going to take a swing at understanding the purpose of job descriptions and how and if they are really helping us get the talent we need. Job descriptions are typically the first step in attracting the most ideal candidates for your organization. And as a reminder, we are live right now. So if you're watching this live and not on the rerun, you can interact with us by asking us questions in the chat field during the broadcast. Without further ado, let's meet our panel today. Joining the program, we have Becca Ramadi, the VP of TAAEF.
Hello.
The Kathy Lee to my Regis, Nicole Block.
Hello.
And our expert joining us brings more than 15 years of HR experience focused on HR strategy and change management within the multifamily, construction, and engineering industries. Joining BH in 2014 as the HR manager and now currently serving as the VP of HR, she holds a bachelor's in business and HR management and is currently wrapping up her master's in leadership and organizational development. She is a huge fan, I should say, of true crime. A young lady that says she can't wink or whistle, but she surely knows how to work. Welcome, Charlotte Flores.
Hi.
So Charlotte, we're here to discuss job descriptions today. You know, historically, job descriptions are often something that gets dusted off every so often when a position opens up, and nobody really puts much thought to it to see if it fits the current needs of the job or the property. Charlotte, tell us your thoughts on what we should be generally thinking about as for job descriptions.
Well, part of it is changing kind of the mindset most of the time. And I mean, myself included for a long time, it's just, they're necessary for compliance, for performance assessment, for all of these other things that it's kind of a check the box. And so it's trying to shift that it's really more of a looking at what you need now, trying to anticipate what you're going to need from that role in the future. Revisiting those job descriptions anytime you have to hire in new for that role to make sure that you are, that job description that may be 5 years old, that it's not just kind of copy and paste and you're posting the job the way it has been for several years. Which I think it's a bigger undertaking. So I think that's why a lot of people just kind of, here's what the job is, it's what it's always been. The job description hasn't really changed other than we've added some years of experience here, or maybe a couple of extra tasks to the job itself. So,
and I think that there's also, to the compliance piece of it too, is that they continue to grow in generality. So, to your point, Charlotte, it's like they're going to come in and they're going to add, but we very rarely are editing. And so before you know it, you might have a 10-page job description, for a leasing consultant. That, we kind of joked earlier when we were talking on our calls that, you might have to be able to lift 50 pounds 20% of the time or something so random that kind of goes back to probably some sort of, compliance or some sort of standard that everyone has to meet. So I think that these job descriptions are vague, in a lot of ways. And that's for flexibility too. I mean, I totally get that. But we very rarely edit them. I think we continue to add more and more data, and it doesn't necessarily serve the purpose to get the right candidate.
Yeah, and being now it's 2021 and we all just went through the year of 2020, definitely a catalyst of change. COVID has changed a lot of responsibilities and the skills that we need to be successful at work. So maybe Charlotte, do you want to touch base on how this past year has helped us do a better job of planning for 2021 with all this rapid change, rapid testing, and what's going on?
Well, I think, 2020 was definitely, everyone was kind of in survival mode, trying to figure out how to rally around and go with all of the changes that were sometimes daily. And so if you think about, from an operations standpoint, what changed in your business in 2020, and then looking at, well, what changes do you then have to make to job descriptions, or how has that fundamentally changed the job that all of your team members are doing day to day now with all of the changes that had to be implemented because of anything COVID related. So a lot of especially what we're seeing is just that increased dependence on the technology, being comfortable with doing virtual tours or FaceTiming as you're touring an apartment or a unit, and recording videos instead of kind of that in-person interaction, and just having individuals that are comfortable with that, because it's a shift, right? A lot of the training is geared toward closing the deal, that sale, that in-person interaction, or the customer service from an in-person perspective. And now we don't have a lot of that. In a lot of cases, that's, foreseeable future. We don't know when that ever gets back to what it was pre-COVID, or if it does. So that technology is huge.
Yeah, and the technology piece for the, like you just mentioned with the leasing associates or any of the office associates, excuse me, if this is something now that's going to become the expectation, then they are going to have performance management that's going to be tied along with that. So do we back it up and put it in the job description? And excuse me, what does that look like? Comfort with technology means something much different right now than it did 5 years ago, 2 years ago. So I think being specific about being able to adapt to changing technologies and being comfortable having a physical presence on social media, having yourself be, potentially being on a Facebook Live, who knows? But I think that that is key to be able to talk about it. And I know when we spoke before, we also talked about the catalyst for the maintenance teams, because I know traditionally just maintenance teams in general have been maybe a little bit of had an aversion to coming aboard with technology, just with using the computer, so I think that our industry was already so far behind. So I think this 2020 it pushed them probably further faster, but they're still not caught up. So, talk a little bit about what we discussed as far as job descriptions for what you're seeing in the maintenance world, maybe with introduction of tablets and, really being virtual. Talk to us about what you guys are seeing.
So, and we did move to a mobile maintenance platform prior to COVID, but I think it's that increased, that dependency on now that you're, for a period of time, we were just doing emergency work orders or, things like that. And so you've gotten where, you've got maintenance teams that are, they're hands-on, right? They're fixing, so having them, sit down or have to carry their phone around or have to have a smartphone. And we have lots of people that, for all the reasons, don't want a smartphone or don't have a smartphone, or like you mentioned, like the tablets, that's huge too. And it's not only now am I trying to teach you this new software that you have to use to do your job, but you also have to be comfortable using the device we're giving you.
Yes. No, absolutely. Well, and I know I didn't realize in your bio that you couldn't wink, but I was just saying, sometimes I was going to wink at you, but sometimes she's doing this.
I'm like this, like I can't.
But I think sometimes there's always people that are later to the party as far as adapting. So sometimes it's a wink, wink, or a nod, nod to where a property manager might help, their service manager with the, that part of the administrative part of the job. And with COVID, a lot of people went to, again, the offices were closed or they had to stay 6 feet apart. Sometimes maintenance had to stay outside. They couldn't come in the office per se very often. So now they're doing their payroll through an app on their phone. So you're seeing a lot more missed punches or missed time and they're struggling with that. Or now they're really doing the service requests and communications and portals. And so I think that they're actually doing more hands-on than they might have done in the past. And now again, those ones I think are still behind, because now they're going to come up and everybody else has jumped forward now. So I think that really should be something. I'm glad that you guys are looking at it for job descriptions, because it's definitely going to affect how you hire, because now it's different. I mean, 100%, if you want them to be successful, they need that skill set too.
Well, and it's important that they even remember to think about job descriptions and all these changes that have happened because of 2020 and COVID, that I'm glad we're talking about this, because it's something that, as we said, can stay, on the to-do pile for a long time. But as you both are talking, it seems more and more important that those things get updated.
Well, I think the only way we're communicating now with our residents, I guess not the only way, but the majority of the way we're communicating is not as much in person. And that's where traditionally our service teams have just been such an integral part of that team for renewal retention. They're in the units, they're communicating with everyone and building value. And so we have to help them to learn how to build value in a virtual environment.
Absolutely. And also, so talking about like the remote environments and setting that up for success, how is that going to be included in the job description? And also just the second part, technology had been a part of our industry for a while. And I'm excited to see this catalyst for change, you know, that everybody is moving very quickly to make sure that we have all the technology in order, we have all the processes and procedures that we're going to need. But I also think that other part of it too is maybe working remotely, and what that structure looks like in the individual's lives too, and what then your organization is also looking for. If you can touch a little bit on the 18-part question I just threw out.
I was like, so which part did Charlotte answer first?
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, I'll wing it, and you can tell me if I missed anything. No, I think a lot of it too, especially when you talk about job descriptions or when you're interviewing and looking for candidates, right? Because a lot of it is remote, especially when you get to a lot of the corporate offices. There's two parts, right? It's one, being comfortable with that, recognizing that you are going to start a new company, new team, and you're probably not going to meet anybody in person for who knows, right? Maybe ever,
yeah.
right? And then as you're looking at leaders, managers, supervisors that you're bringing in to manage these teams, there's a whole different layer of team building, a whole different competency skill set that you're thinking through, because you have to be able to manage in a virtual environment, which is not easy, especially when you're spread out, when there is no, hey, you know, yep, I can really just meet you down the street or something when something comes up. And that's not an option in a lot of cases. So I think there is more emphasis on not only are you going to be able to thrive in an environment where you probably aren't going to be sitting with a team or have that immediate kind of exchange or that collaboration, but can you manage and lead other people in the same environment?
Key, totally key. And managing remotely is something that is one, it's a skill too. I mean, and then you have to foster that skill. So you can't just, to your point, zip down the street, you know, and be there in person. But you have to figure out a way to make connections and be intentional. And also, you're having to empower your associates more faster, because you can't physically be there. So they're having to potentially ask the question, you know, walk with the vendor, make the decision, you know, whatever it might be, with you and them maybe talking on the phone or like this. And, you know, but also they have to build that with their teams. And it's a much different skill set. And I think that it's something that we've seen people flourish doing that, you know, during 2020, and we've seen people struggle, you know, because they're used to they're not used to this new format. So adaptability will be key for remote learning, but managing it, that's something we have to focus on.
So we're talking about too, updating your job descriptions. So like really bringing them current to what our current needs are. Now, historically, and I don't know if a lot of people have been doing this, like maybe reevaluating every year to find out what those needs are, but traditionally, has it been taboo to change a job description that's been in place for so long? Are there any kind of performance metrics that are tied to them that, you know, indicated why this job description is the way it is? If you care to share a little bit of a thought on that, Charlotte.
I think a lot of times it's really hard, especially if you've had people that have been in a role for a while, or you start to try to tailor the job description to the person. So if you've got multiple people in the same role, that's where that's a challenge sometimes. But I also think that when you're revisiting, looking at kind of what it is that you really need, trying not to, like I said, you have to kind of anticipate or understand what the role is now, but also anticipate what you need it to be in the future. Or I've got 3 people in this role already, so now that we're adding to that, I need somebody else to bring something else to, or whatever that, like you're looking at everybody, and it's really hard to separate the person in the job already from what you're really saying you need in the role.
Charlotte, what about on property? What if one property needs something very different than another? But
that never happens, right?
No, Becca, you're way off base, Becca, way off base.
It's the same, right? It's the same. I mean, you have your leasing consultants, your community managers, your maintenance supervisors, but if you've got a property that is, you know, under rehab or other, you know, depending on different situations, different clients, whatever is going on at the property, larger property, smaller property, it's the same, right? We have the same job description for every role on site, but it really does depend on the property. And there's so many other dynamics of the property that tie into the person that you should be looking for when you're adding.
Well, and that's the trick with the job description, is it has to be, you know, generic enough to apply across all platforms. You know, it has to be generic enough to represent your company in that position, and then, and give it some breathing room for the team dynamic that is specific to a high rise versus a mid rise versus affordable versus, whatever, mixed
Right.
use, whatever it might be that they are potentially going to be supporting. But to your first question of the 18-part question, Blaze, why is it that we don't do it? It's a huge undertaking. If
It
you
is.
think about, if you look at that job description, and because of how we have done it for the past couple of decades, for sure, is what they are as opposed to what they probably could be. It's in the
Yeah.
ripple effect of that action. So we go through and take 3, 6, 9 months of, strategy, asking questions. I know, Charlotte, we talked about, who do you talk to, about the role? Do you talk to their supervisor or do you talk to the person in the role? Because it'll be a different answer.
Mhm.
We also talked about that there are new positions being created all the time that weren't around last year. So
Right.
do we create the position and then 90 days after kind of talk through, okay, now what is it you're actually doing now that you're
Right.
here? So
Yeah.
I think the undertaking is so
It's
huge.
a lot. Yep.
Yeah, and you have to really strategize on what the structure is going to be, where do you start, and then execute on it. So it could take a year, Blaze. I mean, it really literally could take a year to do it right. And so when you think about the year that we've had just surviving in 2020, I
True.
think that's what is holding us back a little bit.
So to speak on that point then as well, I don't know how often y'all would do it, but do you survey those people in those positions? Do you give a more realistic view of what the job description should include? And how do you go about doing that? How often is that? Is that just for new positions? Is that for positions that have been there forever? You also mentioned earlier about, lifting 50-pound requirement. I know a lot of people haven't been to the gym lately. So is that even necessary right now from the new way that
And
we're
if
approaching?
you're a remote worker, I mean, not trying to be funny, but again, like if you are a remote worker, if your purse is 50 pounds, that's your own prerogative, right? Like what is it that you're lifting? And I think
My
that's
purse is not 50 pounds. It's
okay. It's
Good.
60.
That's good because it's really bad for your back. Just so you know.
I know. I can't even find my purse half the time being in a COVID world. Like when when I need to go to the grocery store, I'm like, where's my wallet? Where's my mask?
Right.
I don't even know where my purse is, but I think that's true in looking at asking those, those questions. But also true to what Charlotte said too, is that we still have to, I mean,
Right.
we still have to start the process. And I think that the BH is really keen and focused on it, which I think is going in the right direction.
Yeah, we definitely, right. You think about 2020 also and all of the things that you had planned for 2020 initiative wise, or just, other goals or anything that you had in 2020. And it was, nope, we're putting all of that on hold. We just have to get through this year. We don't know what's going to happen. So we'll revisit all of this in 2021. So now it's finding time to bake this into everything that you put on hold that you're now resuming. So, I mean, it just adds another layer to where do we make time to do this and how do we approach it? And to be honest, I mean, we don't know. I mean, we're still trying to figure it out.
Well, the ripple effect of 2020 still isn't over, right? We
Right.
still have financial implications. We still have eviction moratoriums. We still have all kinds of local, state, and national ordinances that we're still not. We still don't know the real effect, and so we're also kind of in a holding pattern, Blaze, because when do we pull the trigger? Because when are we going to see the full impact? And I think that's another reason, not that it's justifiable, but we're also starting the year behind because we're making up for 2020 and then trying to, like Charlotte said, put in initiatives for 21. It is still just daunting.
Yeah,
Right.
there's still a lot of question marks, I feel like, and it's evolving. It's evolving quickly, I feel, but yeah, there's still a lot of question marks on how do we approach this, and I can definitely feel that. But that's why we're having these conversations, right?
Absolutely.
To start thinking about this, start preparing. What could we look forward to?
Well, and we're still hiring, right, Charlotte?
Oh, sure.
You're still hiring, and you still need those. You still need those job descriptions, and you want to get the best talent you can. So let's talk a little bit, if it's okay, Blaze, about the job seeker's perspective and what they can learn from a job description, maybe how to decode it a little bit, and how to then put themselves, their best foot forward.
Yeah, Charlotte, if you want to take the lead on that.
Well, right, that's in terms of decoding, right? There's a lot of companies that you have the job posting itself, which is not necessarily the same as the actual job description because you're trying to appeal to, attract, whatever that looks like. So making the more, the actual posting more fun. And so the flip side of that is sometimes you get too detailed and now you have this, 3-page, job description or job posting where it's like, well, I don't know if I'm reading it. I don't know if I want to apply to that job. That seems pretty overwhelming just in the beginning. But the other piece to that is just even looking at the language that you're using when you're posting the job and in your job description. Are you discouraging, are you using overly masculine language in the posting and then the job description that might discourage women from applying for that job, or overly feminine? Or are you, like the leasing consultant, going back to that, are you saying that you need to have 3 years experience for a job that you really probably don't need because it's going to discourage anybody looking to maybe get their foot in the door in property management or try something different in the sales, customer service type role, that you're going to discourage because they don't have that going in? So I think that the wording is pretty important, but that goes back to figuring out what it is you need and then tailoring that to the candidate pool you're trying to attract.
Yeah, and at what point do you introduce the job description? I think that, to your point, if you're posting, but as a job seeker, if you're looking at the job, not to get too discouraged, because there's plenty of, they're putting out there an idyllic candidate, excuse me. They'll normally say what's not negotiable and what is.
Right.
They'll normally say, you must have a XYZ, or they'll say this is preferred. Well, preferred, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is absolutely a necessity. So I think making parallels to the decoding will be, what type of customer service experience do you have that parallels with this industry, or what type of, problem solving or leadership, or, whatever those things might be, because we're hiring for aptitude and potential, and attitude, right? So so I think that as a job seeker, there are parallels to make, and in not being afraid to take what you have done and then, kind of mix that together with what you could do, and be able to speak on it.
So that's important too, not to understand that there are some wording that can exclude some certain candidates, and we would want to be conscious of that and conscientious of that, to not want to exclude people for a specific way that we phrase a job description. Is there anything more specific that you want to touch on that topic at all?
I mean, I think just, as you look at, I know a lot of companies, you've got your DE&I initiatives, or you've got that embedded in your culture. And I think so that's where it's a good idea, even if you're not prepared to do the full on kind of, let's survey the different people in the different roles and redo all of the job descriptions. It's not a bad idea to go back and check and just look at how things are worded. But check with, if you've got a DE&I committee, maybe have them look at it. If you've got an interview committee where it's made up of a bunch of, it's a diverse group of people, have them look at it, just because it's not intentional. Again, it's that copy and paste. The job description's probably been the same. You had verbiage approved by legal, whatever it is, and you're not even thinking through kind of how that could be discouraging to just about anybody you could think of. Like, it's not something that you think of when you're sitting there going through job description.
Yeah, and it's a tool,
Here's a hint from HR. Is D&I, I'm going to decode diversity and inclusion.
Yes, sorry, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yes, DE&I.
DE&I.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, but I would say that the focus on that, definitely is, and it's timely, and we want to make sure that we're, as we're bringing people in, that we're giving, getting everyone an opportunity, of course, to come and join our fantastic industry. And then we're giving our industry just a broader choice of qualified candidates, which is a win-win in both situations.
Absolutely. Now, Becca, are you checking the live feed too? Do we have any comments or questions that are?
Nothing specific, not yet. Come on, folks, let's hear some questions.
I know. Yeah. Well, they're probably like job descriptions. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic. There's so much density to it as well. And I feel like part of my 18-part question was because when you guys were going back and forth on that, it was like so much was being thrown out. And I was like, all right, trying to remember what points to touch. So I was like, I'm going to give you an 18-part question, and then you guys can just bounce it back and forth.
He's like, I'll let y'all talk for 30 minutes. I'm going to give you an 18-part question, and I'm going to sit back.
Yeah. And, it's funny, we talked about remote working as well. And at one point of this, I had to shut my camera off quick and yell to my kids to cut it out. because I hear them on the other side. So I hope that didn't come through, but that's one of those adaptability traits that we need to get in our new modern world for when we are remote working.
Yep. I think when you think through competencies for each of your roles, adaptability, resiliency, like all those were like buzzwords for 2020. I think they just continue into 2021.
Well, and like we talked about on the interviewing segment from Hints from HR is that, so if those are the buzzwords, right, then how do you back into questions during interviewing so that the candidate can display those characteristics or not? You know, so I think people, again, they're thinking, ooh, I need someone who's adaptable. I need someone who's resilient. And then go back and listen to our interview prep, you know, and make sure that that's part of your process so that you're asking the right questions for them to be able to prove they are resilient or prove they are adaptable. Because too many times we use those buzzwords and we think everyone knows what they mean, you know, and we don't ask specific questions to get us, you know, and the candidate to the best answer.
Yep. Interview questions is like, I mean, I get why it was a whole separate topic, right? Because I mean, that's just from job descriptions to interview questions. Like, I think we could probably spend another 4 hours talking about that.
Lightly, yeah.
So here's a question. So we talked about this a little bit, but I don't know that we got a good answer. When do you recommend the job description be introduced, if not at the job posting?
So some of the most effective interviews that I've had in my career have been when that's where your talent acquisition or your recruiting team comes in, because it's the job posting. When you set up that initial phone screen or that initial interview with your talent acquisition team, that's when you have the conversation, ask the questions, like things seem to be going well, and it's like, great, like I want to send you the actual job description, like take a look at it. Do you have questions? Kind of talk through it then, instead of throwing it out there immediately in the job posting or whatever. And not to say either one's right or wrong, that's just what's been most helpful in my experience.
Yeah, and I would probably concur with that. You want to ensure that the candidate has potential, and you feel good about, that you want to talk further with them about the opportunity, and then send that job description. But I think before you hit send to everyone out there, make sure you feel good now about what you're sending. Is it well? And I think that that we are having this conversation, Charlotte, because we want everyone else to have this conversation and start it. Because what we're starting now might not bear fruit till the end of the year. So be cognizant of what you're sending in that job description. Is it really a portrayal of your company? We talked about culture. We talked about, again, what characteristics we're looking for. Or is it just something that you've had for 10 years and you're sending it as generic? I don't know that it serves a purpose at that point. So you just make sure you feel good about what you're sending.
Right. And to your point on culture, that's something else too, is just your job descriptions, the roles, anything that you're posting for when you're advertising or looking for talent. Does all of that align with your company's values or their mission? Or because it's an afterthought, right? It's because a lot of people, myself included, you start talking about, okay, we've got to update job descriptions, and you can hear the eye roll. It's like, okay, here we go. Not realizing, right, it's so much bigger than that. And it ties into so many other things, especially the culture piece. It's like, are you reflecting outwardly, like what your company really does value, and wanting to add to your team people that have those same values, that share that vision, all the things.
And for some reason, the job descriptions have just not been on the forefront, I think, of a lot of companies' minds. I mean, I think that it's great that you guys are looking at it, truly, Charlotte, because, it encourages me to hear other people that are thinking about it and talking about it, because it has been one of the things in our, we've kind of admitted we needed a boost in technology several years ago, or boost in next gen, coaching and development, but we need a boost in, this is another thing that's been sitting kind of idle for 10 years that I think we should kind of shake things up and get it moving in the right direction.
Well, this was a good first step.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Absolutely. I just want to leave the audience too with one final question. That is, your company doing everything to ensure that they reflect an accurate description of the roles at your company, and just reanalyze what your current needs are and make sure that, you're putting out there what you want to get back. So I thank you guys again too for a tremendous conversation, because every time I'm on this as well, I learn so much. And I hope everybody that's watching, and I know they do, I get some feedback that they feel the same way. Charlotte, you fantastic fantastic guest. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I won't try to wink or whistle, but thank you.
I would love it though. Come on.
Yeah, I think we need possibly an attempt at the whistle.
No, it just sounds like I'm blowing air into the mic. It literally is like that. That's it. Can't do it.
I love it.
Well,
Couple of housekeeping. Got it?
I just want to thank you guys, and then I'll get to the housekeeping. I know we got one
Okay.
housekeeping item, but Becca and Nicole, thank you for everything you do. We're going to take next Wednesday off because TAA and TAA-EF board meetings will be happening. Voting for the next Ambassador Video Challenge starts on February the 3rd. I believe that's next Wednesday. So
Exciting.
check out the instructions on how to vote on TAA-EF's Facebook and other social media pages. You definitely can get more information from TAAEF.org. Blaze, you did an all right job hosting. Good job to you. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And it was a pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
all.
Bye.
Thank you.